We have so much to talk about. It is ridiculous. All right. So buckle up, baby. We got news and notes on the coaching staff. We have options that were picked up. We have a trimmed 40-man roster. We have some players getting DFA'd, some people's getting claimed on waivers by other teams. The offseason's officially here, baby. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check out the SiriusXM app as well. You can search any team and get the home radio broadcast for it straight from the app. It is an awesome feature and an awesome app. Check out the SiriusXM app. Let's get serious. All right, let's get serious. Lock in. Okay, we have a bunch to talk about. Hope everyone is having a fantastic start to their week. The offseason is officially underway. I feel like I've said that like the last 5 episodes, but regardless, every day we just are more and more back in offseason mode. The playoffs are over. Moves are happening plenty. Okay, so we have a boatload to discuss. We're going to start off by just talking about some news and notes. There's a couple of coaching rumors, some coaching moves that have officially happened, some stuff with AJ Hinch that'll take 2 seconds. So we have a couple of things to talk about there. Then we have the roster moves. That's going to be a bulk of the show. That the Tigers have trimmed their 40-man roster down to 40 men. So we are going to talk about the people who are no longer on the 40-man roster, who they put on waivers or DFA'd or cut ties with to trim the roster down. We have some changing of teams already happening. And then we're going to talk about some additions made to the 40-man roster as well at the very end of the show. So let's start with the news and notes part of this. Just a couple of coaching things to talk about here. Fantastic beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, Evan Petzold, mentioned that Joey Cora, who is the former Mets third base coach, could be a potential replacement for Alfredo Amezaga. This is something that we talked about when it happened, right? Kind of the hole that is now at third base coach for the Detroit, or at first base coach rather, for the Detroit Tigers. Who knows how they're going to, divvy up first and third or whatever. But there was a rumor at the time that Gabe Alvarez of the Erie Seawolves was someone in a position who could have taken that spot. And now it's looking at like Joey Cora is the favorite, according to Evan Petzold, but no news yet there at the time of the recording. We also have hired Tyler Anderson to be a minor league pitching coach for the Detroit Tigers, also reported by Evan Petzold. So that's another addition to the minor league development that has been so strong on the pitching side of things for this organization. And then the last one we'll talk about before we get to AJ Hinch for 2 seconds is that James Rowson, who has been an assistant hitting coach for the Detroit Tigers over the past year, he was brought in. He was one of the first people brought in after Scott Harris got hired, is now in serious consideration for becoming the next Yankees hitting coach. So there is a possibility the Tigers lose one of the members of their coaching staff here via the New York Yankees. Now, it's also important to remember the Tigers have, I believe, 3 total hitting coaches in their organization right now. So at the major league level, rather, right now. So if Rowson was to leave, it wouldn't be like the Tigers would necessarily need to jump out and like, we have to find a replacement hitting coach. We'd still have 2. And this is one of the assistants that we would be losing. But has a decent pedigree, has worked with Aaron Judge before. That was something that Eric Boland reported on. So that would be a reason why the Yankees may be interested. So we'll see how that unfolds. The last thing to talk about here on the coaching side of like news and notes thing that happened on Monday is that AJ Hinch sold his Birmingham condo. And I know it's ridiculous that we're talking about it, but a lot of people had a knee-jerk reaction, kind of freaked out about it. So we are going to address it. There is zero indication by anybody in or around the organization that this is an implication that AJ Hinch is leaving the Detroit Tigers. Evan Petzold, again, I cite Evan a lot because he's so good at his job and is a fantastic reporter. Talked about how he is likely, like there's a chance that he's just selling the condo to get a house. And there's some, talks about like his family life now. And people are like, well, like his kids are like graduating like high school. So now he can, no longer have to be based in Houston. He can live here. Like there's a lot of stuff being talked about at AJ Hinch's personal life on Monday, just because there was kind of a slight freak out a little bit when it was announced that he was selling his Birmingham condo. But again, there is zero, and I mean zero, from anybody that I have talked to or that has reported throughout the organization that would imply that this is like AJ Hinch might be leaving the organization. Now, crazier things have happened. I'm not putting like a guaranteed stamp on this, right? I don't know much more than y'all know, if anything, more than y'all know. But again, there are very, very little indications that this is actually, an implication that he is to leave. Okay, so we're all good there. Got the news and notes out of the way. Let's talk roster moves, baby. Carson Kelly's option was officially picked up by the Detroit Tigers. That was really the only one that was up in the air, right? Eduardo Rodriguez, since February, again, I keep bringing it up, we've talked about on this show, was a guaranteed opt-out as long as he stayed healthy this year. He did. He opts out. Zero surprise to anybody, right? It should be a zero surprise to anybody. Javy Baez, flip side of the same coin, other side of the same coin. Is that the expression? I don't know. But also a guaranteed opt-in, and that was a player option, not a team option. Obviously, it was a team option. That thing would have been declined very quickly, as Javy had struggled mightily, unfortunately, in 2023. We've talked about that plenty. We will talk about that plenty more as the offseason goes along and we start talking about the 2024 season. So Javy was a guaranteed opt-in. There was no conversation. He obviously was going to. And Erod was an opt-out. Carson Kelly was the one question mark. That is a team option for $3.5 million. And there was some debate about, is the offensive upside really there? What's going to happen? He didn't have fantastic, again, offensive numbers for the Detroit Tigers or for the Arizona Diamondbacks, just in general, kind of struggled at the plate. But I'm not really mad at this. And the biggest reason why is, it's backup catcher. I'm not going to lose sleep over a decision of backup catcher. I don't think that's going to cost us or win us too many games. Ideally, you would like your backup catcher to have an OPS higher than a number that starts with 5, right? Which is what Kelly did for most of 2023. But he was really sound defensively. He called good games. All the pitchers talked about how appreciative they were of him and how quickly he learned. Chris Fetter especially talked about, and Hinch, I guess, talked about how quickly Kelly kind of picked up the game plan for a lot of the pitchers that he was catching. So I have no issue with him getting picked up. And the biggest reason why, the actual biggest reason why, was because of the catching market this year. Carson Kelly gets picked up. Okay, if it's not Carson Kelly, who on the catcher free agency market is going to sign with a team to be a backup and that you actively want, right? Gary Sanchez, I'm good, right? And I'm a catcher at heart, right? I caught my entire life. So maybe I'm slightly biased towards the defensive side in the game calling more so than just having a guy with a 750 OPS back there. If you can do both, that's great. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Jake Rogers. But especially in backup catcher, I'm much more prioritizing just defense. Gary Sanchez is at the top of the list if you, depending on what WAR you use. And then after that, we'll talk about a few names here that I guess they could have gone to, but I'm really pretty comfortable with the Carson Kelly decision. If it doesn't go well next year and he's not doing well early on, we can have a conversation as well about what the alternatives may be. We will have that conversation right after I tell y'all about our friends over at FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get in on the NFL action. It's been a really, really fun season of NFL football. Obviously, if you're a Lions fan as well, you agree with me there. I got to put my banners back up. I had somebody comment about that the other day. I'm appreciative that y'all notice. I moved just a couple of weeks ago, so I'm still hanging stuff on walls. But it's been a fun Lions season, and on top of that, as far as baseball offseason, there's some props, right? You can start looking at like where Ohtani is going to end up and some fun stuff like that. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon for the NFL season as well. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow, fully integrated into off-season mode. We got some conversations to have. Obviously, today's episode is mostly like moves that did happen. Tomorrow, we start embarking on our journey of moves that have yet to happen and that will happen later on. And that is, I think, the most fun part of the offseason. We start game planning and throwing ideas back and forth at each other. We'll have a mailbag here in the next couple of weeks in the thick of the offseason as well. But that is the time that you're listening to this, free agency is officially underway. Now, baseball free agency is not quite the same as like basketball free agency or hockey free agency, where it opens and then immediately like 80 people sign and then it's over in like 2 hours, right? Baseball is much more drawn out, and there's a few reasons for that, but not important right now. Regardless, there will be some moves happening. We've already got some trades happening across the league. Obviously, the Tigers, Canna yesterday. You can go check out that breakdown from yesterday's show, but we're in on that. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks. We got some players to protect in the Rule 5 draft. We'll have that conversation. Buckle up, baby. We're here, and I love how I just love baseball, and I love the offseason, and I'm very cautiously optimistic about where the Tigers stand. So wrapping up about Carson Kelly, he will be back next year. That option was picked up. Gary Sanchez being like depending on which WAR you use again, like might be the best option, which is like kind of an indication again of how weak the catcher position is. MLB.com wrote an article of the 25 best free agents with then like 10 or 15 honorable mentions as well. And not one catcher was on the entire list. So gives you kind of an indication there. After that, Mitch Garver, I guess, 33 years old, Victor Carantini, 30 years old, Tom Murphy. Maybe if you want to go like more platoon style, he's more of an offensive catcher, or at least has been at points in his career. And then like after that, like Roberto Perez, Austin Hedges, Kurt Casale, Alfaro, Michael Perez, like, you know what I mean? Like it and then you start Tucker Barnhart not coming back, Manny Pena, you start getting into the negative WAR players. Mike Zunino got DFA'd at one point. Yasmani Grandal, like, was not good this year. It's just that there's not too many catchers out there that were really just like chomping at the bit to get, but B, on top of that, you have to find the balance of is willing to be a backup for you as well. And there's not too many like bona fide starters out there. I guess those top 3 guys or 4 guys might be like, would you rather have Gary Sanchez, Mitch Garver, Victor Carantini, or Tom Murphy over Carson Kelly? I guess that's a conversation, but it's not one that I'm, again, for $3.5 million, you got to think of the money aspect too. Those guys, there's a chance could go for more than that. It's just a really weak catcher market. And for 1 year, just to like, not a stopgap necessarily, but just for a 1 year, we're going to reevaluate and we can find our long-term catcher maybe in the future. I'm willing to just like bank on and see if Carson Kelly still has anything left in the tank. Because at one point he was a pretty darn good hitter as well, or at least a much better hitter. And then if this doesn't work, this is the next thing I want to talk about. If Carson Kelly struggles out the gates next year and he becomes similar to like an Eric Haas situation, then I think 2024, it's time for Dylan Dingler to see what's up. And I don't think that Dingler is going to make the team out of camp, but for only a 1 year, $3.5 million deal, let me tell you, if Dylan Dingler does go into spring training and outplay Carson Kelly significantly, that is going to become more of a conversation than maybe people expect. Again, I'm not banking on it. I would still, on November 7th, the day that that Carson Kelly's option was picked up, right? I would say that it's probably more likely that Kelly is going to be this team's backup catcher on opening day. But I think, we've been waiting on Dingler for a while. He's been developing in the minor leagues for a while. He had some defense stuff to work out. Then at one point, it was just a length of the season thing, in my opinion, for him. Catcher is a really physically grueling and demanding position. And I think he would get off to hot starts and then fade throughout the year. Last year, he hit pretty well. I think it's kind of all coming together for him to maybe get some opportunities in 2024. And then, I think probably the team's best case scenario is Kelly does well enough, and then 2025 can kind of be the Dingler and Rogers show. But that's still 2 years ahead. For now, just talking about 2024, that's kind of where I stand. Okay. Donnie Sands is still on the 40-man roster as it stands right now. I don't have too much confidence he makes it through the winter, to be honest. He did not really impress too terribly much in the minors. It would not shock me if Sands didn't end up playing a game for the Detroit Tigers at the major league level next year, and he obviously didn't this year. So looking at, we already talked about Javy Baez. I know that, okay, he accepted it, right? He opted in. Everybody get your jokes off, all right? Everybody get your, fire away your tweets and your comments about whatever, how mad you are, a funny joke about how bad he is and he opted in, or we can go oh no, how could this happen? And then, okay, we got it all out of our system. This was always going to happen. This is the least surprising thing that's ever happened in the history of baseball. I don't know. I don't have a reaction to this information. I came to terms with the fact that he was going to be on this team for the next 4 years in April. This is not even, I had literally zero reaction to this information. And yeah, he's going to be the shortstop on opening day next year. Okay. So let's talk 40-man roster. The Detroit Tigers had well over 40 men on their roster a couple of days ago and had to trim it to 40 man by the time free agency started at 5 p.m. on Monday night. So obviously Miggy retiring. There's a couple of easy ones in there. Miguel Cabrera officially no longer on the Detroit Tigers roster, by the way. He still technically was there during the postseason and whatnot. Officially official. Miguel Cabrera, no longer a member of the Detroit Tigers as far as being a player goes. So the official, I can read you the official PR statement. Club has exercised the club option for Carson Kelly and Mark Canha. Mark Canha had an $11.5 million club option. We talked about that yesterday. Obviously not news. They traded for him. They have selected Keider Montero to the 40-man roster, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. They have reinstated Casey Mize, Freddie Pacheco, Tyler Alexander, Riley Green, Austin Meadows, all from the 60-day injured list. I know people have Meadows questions. We'll get to that in a second as well. Trey Winginter and Andrew Vasquez have cleared waivers and have been outrighted to AAA Toledo, which means they are no longer on the 40-man roster, and no one picked them up when they were waived. Infielder Zach Short was claimed on waivers by the New York Mets. We'll talk about that. And then Tyler Alexander was designated for assignment. That is where we are going to start. Oh, that was going to be such a cool transition. I can't find the video. That's where we're going to start the conversation right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. So we are going to talk about all of these moves that have happened by the Detroit Tigers to get their roster. Their 40-man roster is now at 40 men at the time of this recording. So they have trimmed it down. Now, it's important to note, this is not this is just kicked my camera. This is not just the 40-man roster throughout the entire winter, and that's is going to be the team in the spring. Obviously, we're hoping that free agents moves happen and some trades happen as well. But even more so, I believe November 17th, I believe in next weekend, not this upcoming, but the weekend following, is the deadline to protect people from the Rule 5 draft. And the Tigers have some fascinating conversations. I cannot wait. We do that episode every single year, the who's going to get protected and who's not. And last year it was like Wilmer Flores was in the conversation, and Wilmer Flores is very much in the conversation this year. We'll talk about him. But like Brennan White was the surprise of last year, right? And like Parker Meadows was protected, etc. So now that like Roberto Campos is in there again, like Wilmer Flores is in the conversation. Like there's some guys that they're going to have to protect. So this is not like the trimming is done. There's going to be more people that are going to be removed from the 40, and that will immediately in the short term be determined by how many people they protect from the Rule 5 draft, but also then just like any move they make at the major league level, any signing they make, obviously more players are going to. So there's still a lot more of flexibility here and a lot more players that are going to get axed here over the next just coming days and weeks, nonetheless months, as we start looking ahead into spring training. But let's talk about Tyler Alexander. So Tyler Alexander was officially designated for assignment. This was a little bit of a surprise to me. We did our Tyler Alexander deep dive. What was that, a couple of weeks ago? It's not the most shocking thing in the world to me. I'm not like stunned, and I don't think that this is like a mistake. I am fine with the decision. Okay, I'm not. I don't think that this is like some huge mistake. I'm totally cool with it. It's just the style of pitcher that he is, I thought was very in line with this front office, right? Like he had a remarkably low walk rate in 2023. And that is not like, oh, it's just a one-off year. That is consistent with his entire career. He has, especially as a reliever, has never walked people. And so I thought that maybe that there was a path for him and Alex Faedo and some of the other people who have emerged as multiple inning relievers for this team to kind of coexist. But I think between the injury this year, the fact that he doesn't really do anything else incredibly well outside of limit walks, career 4.38 ERA, 4.5 in 2023, 4.8 in 2022. He can give you innings. He's a valuable asset. I'm very confident that he will find work elsewhere if it's a minor league deal for depth and then he gets called up midseason or whatnot. I'm very confident he has not pitched his last game, assuming he can come back from injury, which obviously I wish him that he's able to do because he's a cool dude. But this move in a vacuum is like not. It's a little shocking to me, but it's not the most surprising thing ever, and I'm totally fine with it. Totally fine with it. So we'll see. Again, I feel like players like Alex Faedo and the like will really get a huge opportunity to be that kind of long inning reliever / spot starter if you need it. That role that Tyler Alexander has filled, again, like really like well. I have nothing really like bad to say about Tyler Alexander and his tenure year. He was surprisingly already one of the longest tenured Detroit Tigers in the clubhouse this year, besides obviously Miguel Cabrera. And parting ways with him, it feels kind of like the end of an era type of situation. But as far as strictly on the mound and on the field, this is production that the Tigers very much have not only I know can replace, but have proven that they can replace with their pitching development. I think that that's another thing that this move kind of signifies is a confidence in Feder, London, Nieves, in the entire pitching development of the minor leagues as well, to like, hey, next man up. Who's going to fill this void? Because we're not going to make him a priority. Talking about Zach Short. Zach Short is officially a New York Met at the time being, or for the time being, rather. You know, hats off to Shorty. Hats off to the dog, man. Like he is a dog. He is an absolute dog out there. I have a lot of respect for Zach Short. This is one where in 2022, last offseason, rather, 2023, I thought that there was no way Zach Short was going to make it through last winter. And that's why when I did the Zach Short deep dive this year, right, just a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I don't think he's going to make it through, but like he keeps making it through every offseason. So like I'm done predicting that Zach Short is, not going to be a Tiger anymore, even though I still think it's likely. But there's always a chance that Shorty can sneak through. But seems like this year finally got the end of the road. As far as the baseball side of things go, this is not really surprising whatsoever. And on top of that, this is completely fine. This is an organization that on its 40-man roster has a plethora of utility players. And as much as I love and respect Zach Short, he can play multiple positions. He can play a couple of them well. He draws walks. He's got some pop in the bat. He found work elsewhere, right? Like another team valued him and wanted to snag him. So I have all the respect in the world for Shorty. But I'm certainly like totally comfortable and fine with, especially where he's at his point in his career. I'm totally fine with them. Again, like if you just look at the 40 man, you look at who was going to be the odd men out of this roster trimming. Tyler Alexander, a little bit more of a surprise. Zach Short, not really a surprise at all. Totally cool with it. It was something that unfortunately just needed to happen. Keider Montero. Actually, we'll save Keider Montero for last, to be honest. Let's talk about the reinstatement of the injured players, and then we'll talk about Trey Wingenter, Andrew Vasquez, and then we'll end on Keider Montero. Casey Mize, Freddie Pacheco, Tyler Alexander, he was obviously then immediately DFA'd. Riley Green and Austin Meadows all reinstated from the 60-day. I know people have questions about Meadows, so I'll give you kind of the rundown here. You can't have an IL in the offseason. So that is why all these people were reinstated. There is no injured list in over the winter. It doesn't open up again until right before the regular season starts. So they all had to be reinstated. And when it comes to Meadows, the decision to tender and non-tender players is not still for a few weeks. So when people are like, "Oh, well, Tyler Alexander got DFA'd, but Austin Meadows is still here." Again, I said at the beginning of the show, I'll reiterate it. There is still a lot more trimming that has to happen. I don't think it's impossible for Austin Meadows to make it through the winter, but I would be surprised. I am still I'm wishing the dude nothing but the best. We've been very open about this situation and whatnot on this show for the entirety of it for 2 calendar years now almost. But this is at a point where I don't think the Tigers are going to guarantee him a 40-man roster spot again next year. And for all the people that are like chomping at the bit to get this dude out of a job, I'm rather confident that he is going to get non-tendered. And if he doesn't, that's a surprise, and we'll have that conversation when the time comes around. There's also he could make it through the winter and be on the restricted list, which infamously Eduardo Rodriguez was on in 2022. And that's you're dealing with whatever, and it's without pay. And there's a lot of different avenues to go from this, but I still expect Austin Meadows to be a player who I would be still surprised if he made it through the entire winter on the 40-man roster. And him being put on the 40-man today is not an inclination that he's guaranteed going to make it through and be here in spring training and all that. So, okay. So just want to make that clear. Some people are really angry at him. Some people are a lot, are very not angry at him. I don't care where you stand on it. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. I'm just saying, if you think that this move in a vacuum is a guarantee that he's going to make it through the winter, that is not the case. And there's still plenty of time and plenty of roster adjustments that are yet to happen. Okay, cool. Andrew Vasquez, Trey Wingenter, then Keider Montero. Then you're on with your Tuesday. Okay, that's going to be the rundown here. Wingenter and Vasquez, them being casualties of this trimming is not very surprising to me. Wingenter a little bit. We kind of talked about that on the deep dive. He was one where it was a little surprising to me. Vasquez, not as much. He didn't do very well, and his underlying numbers weren't fantastic. But they have been outrighted to Toledo. We'll see. So they are no longer going to be arbitration eligible. So they're not going to be non-tenderable players because they're not on the 40-man roster. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure where they stand as far as minor league free agency goes or whatnot. But we will see what the future holds for them, because minor league free agency also opens here as well. A big deal for players who are not on the 40-man roster. So we'll see what happens with those two guys. But for now, they went through waivers. Nobody picked them up, and they're in Toledo. We'll see if the Tigers extend them an olive branch. If they do stick around, it's going to be hey, here's a minor league contract with an invite to spring training, and you're not on the 40-man roster. Let's see if maybe you can either make the team out of camp and surprise some people, or just start off in Toledo next year again. And that would be like if they were really in love with them. I think that there's a chance that happens with Winginter. I don't expect Vasquez to be in this organization through the winter. Okay, cool. We'll keep tabs on it all, though, obviously. Last thing, Keider Montero, baby. Keider Montero is selected to the 40-man roster. So he is the player that makes the 40-man roster, officially 40 men. And I'm excited. Montero was someone who the Tigers needed to protect from the Rule 5 draft, but he is also someone who would have been, this was, I found this out via Evan Woodbury of M Live, another one of our fantastic beat writers in the city, said that he would have been eligible for minor league free agency as well. So in order to protect him from minor league free agency and from the Rule 5 draft, the Tigers just added him today or yesterday, as you're listening to this, to the 40-man roster. Montero's a really intriguing pitcher down in the minors. He, this past season, didn't have like the greatest ERA in the world, but the underlying numbers are really solid. Had a 4.93 ERA in AAA in 42 innings, a 4.93 ERA exactly. That's kind of crazy. In AA, in 69 and a third innings, and then a 2.81 ERA in 16 innings in high single A. So he pitched for 3 different levels this year, and he got promoted from AA despite the ERA of almost 5. A lot of that has to do with like the underlying numbers say he should have been a lot better. I mean, if you're looking at like FIP and XFIP, it was 3.35 and 3.60. So if you're someone who's analytically inclined for those stats, says that his ERA should have been lower, just got a little bit of bad luck. But even if you're not an analytically like super inclined person, like Reese Olson had a 9 ERA and he got called up and had a pretty darn good year, right? The just strictly looking at ERA does not tell even remotely close to the full story. Miguel Diaz, right? Another example, just this season, right? And nonetheless, the laundry list of examples over the last couple of years. But Miguel Diaz, again, like had a pretty high ERA in the minors, gets called up, had a really solid last month of the season for the Detroit Tigers. So the biggest thing that I look at when it comes to especially people with Montero's profile, which is like mid-90s fastball, can get up to upper 90s, like has touched 97 before. This is like a prototype for the spinny kind of era that we're in the Tigers organization, right? Like Jackson Jobe, obviously, his claim to fame is how much his pitches spin. Keider Montero is another guy, a lot of spin on his curveball and his slider. So that's fun. And then he has a changeup that's like not really the best pitch in the world. He has a lot of work to do with his changeup still. But again, like if he can separate the curveball from the slider, which this season he was able to do that to an extent. That was a big part of his development this year. That's 4 pitches with a fastball that can get into upper 90s. That'll play, right? Especially with the amount of movement and spin that those pitches are going to have. And the K rate kind of reflects that. 10.07 K per 9 in AAA, 11.81, almost a 12 K per 9 in just under 70 innings in AA this year. And then in 16 innings, a 12.38 K per 9 in high single A. The biggest thing for him is just going to be limiting the walks. And I know that like kind of concerns people just because we have several relievers who are really nasty, but that walk guys, this is going to be a high priority for this organization, as it has been abundantly clear. I don't think they're going to jump the gun on him and call up somebody who's just going to walk, everybody under the sun. I feel like they're going to take their time with development of him. He's now on the 40. He has plenty of time. Last year he was only 22 years old. He's got his options because he's just been put on the 40 for the first time. We have plenty of time to develop Keider Montero, but I'm very excited. The big question around him is reliever or starter. I lean on the side of reliever, and that's not a slight against his stuff or his ability. I just think the profile makes a lot more sense out of the pen, and I think you can get some more miles per hour to that velocity, which I think is huge. I think he can go multiple innings, which is, again, huge. And I think that when it comes to your need for him to be a starting pitcher, I don't think that it's that much of a necessity. It would not shock me if he was pitching out of the bullpen in long relief for the Tigers in 2024. Like that would not shock me whatsoever. If, June or July of next year, we were talking about Keider Montero pitching, 2-3 innings out of the pen for Detroit. What would surprise me if he was starting games. That would surprise me. There's still some mechanical stuff and some walk number stuff that I want to see improved on. And that's going to be kind of like the biggest thing for him is just nailing down the command. Okay. And again, like in AAA, he didn't have like otherworldly walk numbers, but the whip was like 1.5. That's higher than you'd like it in a perfect world. But like clearly has swing and miss stuff, clearly has strikeout stuff, just needs to really kind of hone in the command. And really, it's the secondary pitches kind of utilizing that spin and maximizing his fastball effectiveness as well. It's really good in the top of the zone, could be a little better in other places. So that's kind of like my quick rundown of Keider Montero, the newest member of the Tigers 40-man roster. And that's my rundown of this show, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back tomorrow. Full steam ahead, offseason mode, baby. Can't wait to go on the journey of the offseason with y'all. I appreciate you all so much for continuing to support the show. And let's have some fun, okay? Let's have some fun. Let's build a winner. I'm nervous as all heck, but, cooler heads will prevail. Okay, we're going to go through it together. I appreciate y'all greatly. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.